then one of my buddies told me, like, well, Sam McHugh, he was telling me what his internet speed is. Like, holy shit, you're like 100 times faster than I am, and we're on the expensive package, but
Yeah,
that's
likewise.
just what it is out here.
Gotcha. Yeah. Our like huge city out here is like 100,000 people, so we're like on a same. It's not the it's not the pinnacle of civilization or by any stretch of the imagination, but it's all right.
Yeah, I think it says we're live. Um, Not show. Oh, there it is. All right. Oh, hey, we got people. We do got people watching. All right. Well, howdy there, folks. I'm live here with Mr. Henry Merrill. Is that how you pronounce it, Merrill?
Yes, sir.
All right. Fellow podcaster, cowboy podcaster. He is the host of a show called Cowboys and Philosophers. Pretty new. When did you start doing this, Henry?
Oh, it's been like 2 months at the most.
Okay, I was gonna say you're pretty brand new because I couldn't find you on my normal app that I use. I've got a garbage
Garbage.
Samsung phone, and I so I have to use that app. And I couldn't find you, but I saw you on YouTube, and I hate watching podcasts on YouTube because I'm always on the go, and so you can't like lock your screen and whatnot.
Right.
So that's why I prefer that, just like a audio podcast. But anyhow, I thought this would be a good time to talk about philosophy and whatnot. So we just had, well, I guess it's not a certified winner, but we had a declared winner by the Associated Press. Joe Biden is well, declared the president elect. And as we were talking here just a little bit before, I kind of had a pretty strong uh, suspicion that the country was leaning more towards Trump just because of the lockdowns and the the bad press and everything. I thought the country and then the riots, the riots nationwide. I thought that was going to be what swung everything towards Trump, and I was predicting a red tsunami. I think my final prediction was Trump with 341 on the electoral side, and I figured, and then the rest of it, I called it pretty accurately. I figured the Republicans would pick up some seats in the House, but not win it, and then they would hold the Senate, which that's kind of in limbo, and I, I'd be I'd be shocked if they don't spend $1 billion in Georgia for these two runoffs between the two parties. Um, they are going to dump so much money into advertising there. But um, this election was a little disappointing. Not because I'm a huge Trump guy, but because I it seems like maybe the country is leaning a little harder left than I was reading, and that part is I'm not a hard right wing guy, but the way they're leaning is a hard shift towards socialism, and that I'm not really okay with. But um, how did you have this one going?
It was like we were just talking a little bit beforehand. I wasn't sure, to be honest with you. I saw some of the polling and I figured he would get I have a lot of friends in Florida and they are like diehard. It's almost like what scares them, right? And so I figured all you would literally
Mm,
have to do is say the word socialism and a lot of the Latin vote there would jump Trump. And so I don't know, just for so many reasons, I honestly I'm just gonna see what happens. I had no clue. I kind of suspected that Biden was gonna take it in several of the battleground states, and yeah, I think I kind of anticipated happening what was happening. I thought that it was gonna be a pretty clear Biden win, but I wasn't sure. I was up for anything. I was ready to be wrong at any minute, and So
Did you see Arizona? I guess have they called Arizona yet?
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Once I kind of found out, I've stopped following a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not really surprised with Arizona for like a couple reasons. I mean, one, because obviously the major metropolitan regions are, crucial in terms of just population, and
Yeah.
but I also, Arizona has always, like I said, bread and buttered Arizona guy, and it's always had a really independent streak, and it's had
Mm-hmm.
a really weird demographic in terms of. So when I look at a lot of the older Arizonans that I knew, they came out here, and were Mormon settlers, and I do think there's this kind of cultural thing that's been passed down. I grew up, my whole family was Mormon except for my branch of the family. And,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the religious evangelical vote kind of passed right, but a lot of these people I knew down in the Tucson area, northern Arizona, were very like a kind of almost Quaker value system. That kind of like they're not religious anymore, but they're not like a personal responsibility for others. They're not like I can do whatever I want, but you better do this. They're like I save my money, I don't eat out, I sew my own clothes so that I can give my money to the poor. And they've always been
Mm-hmm.
different in that aspect. They've always been like a really kind of strange social demographic to describe, and they tend to lean independent and do kind of crazy things like that. So I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. I just thought I knew Arizona was going to be close. I knew but I had it going red just because maybe it's probably a little bit of an echo chamber on my part because I live out in the middle of nowhere. I like that. I but I thought I had a pretty good read on some of the cities because of just some friends I had. But it turns out, man, yeah, I'm just a little more in an echo chamber than I thought, and yeah, and I just I think I underestimated how much people hated Trump too. Like
Right,
I say people, but like people that hated him, like really hated him, and I think
right,
that bled down to like the people that would normally had been indifferent had a like mild to moderate dislike for him.
right.
And I guess because I've got a pretty strong dislike for him. But I also from a comedy side, I freaking love him. He might be one of the funniest guys to ever live,
Yeah.
from like a troll's perspective. And I don't know. I guess that kind of going we're talking a little political philosophy, and I've tossed around that term quite a bit, and I call myself a philosophizer. And but when I got to thinking about it, I was like, I'm not really. I don't know much about the true meaning of philosophy, and I haven't read a whole lot of Socrates or Aristotle or Plato. I've read some Murray Rothbard here and there, but
Okay.
as far as like the classical philosophers, I know a little bit about them, but I haven't really read any. And so, like, I guess what is philosophy?
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, let me bore you. Let me
All right.
wake up and tell me when to stop. Um, the number one thing that you have to do to be philosophy is just be able to talk a lot of crap. You got to be able to just drone on about it. So I'm going to do that. So philosophy was originally like it was everything. It was a study of everything, basically minus mathematics. So I'm sure you've heard it before. What you would take philos would mean love, and and
Mm,
um, and sophos wisdom. And so it was supposed to be like a love of wisdom or something like that. And it's supposed to be like a filter to basically see the world through, and it uses you use logic, pure logic, and formal logic and informal logic to try to make as close to as valid inferences as you can about the world. And it's rooted in like a sense of awe or a sense of wonder to try to you know your cognitive limitations. And so it comes down in three main branches: epistemology, which would be the study of experience, metaphysics, which is going to be your God stuff, the nature of reality, and ethics, which is how to live your life. And so it tries to answer questions that science can answer. How should you live your life? What's the best way to live your life? What is the nature of experience? And the minute that those things can be answered by science in a scientific way, it becomes another discipline. For instance, science used to be called natural philosophy, and we would philosophize about the way things worked. And then the minute that science could start answering those questions, it became science, and it was no longer called natural philosophy. And so it tries to, they say science answers ours, like our questions, the nature, the way things are, and philosophy answers questions that are more along like the lines of oughts, like what ought you to do, how ought you to think. So
Okay.
yeah, yes, that's a little bit of it in a nutshell, and then it goes on to get pretty far out there.
So there's from there you can go to like a moral philosophy, you can have a political philosophy, and then and then that can all be branched down into to whatever. And this might be kind of shocking to a lot of people, but what we can deduce from that is there's probably more than two ways to think. I mean,
Shocking.
that's you know major breaking news, but there's actually more even than three ways to think. So that's um we might find that out come when we come to dissect all these election results when you're talking about like the Cuban American vote down in Florida, and also kind of the Mexican vote down on particularly in Texas on the border itself, went heavily red, whereas like the inner city El Paso, San Antonio, the Mexican vote there I'm sure was probably pretty predominantly Biden, and it's just like, yeah, well, maybe there is more to it than just red and blue, a Republican, Democrat, white, black. There's a lot to life, and there's a lot that goes into how somebody thinks.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's pretty prevalent. The idea is that they say when you're training colts, you're training them whether you're training them or not. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's philosophy as well. You're doing it whether you think you're doing it or not. So
Mm,
we're all doing it.
yeah.
So those of us that say we're doing it or trying to do it for a living are not that special. We're all doing it in one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. That's for sure. So, how did you get uh, into? I guess what are the origins of Cowboys and Philosophers?
Oh man. Okay. I'll try not to bore you too bad again. I'll try to be kind of succinct. So I was going for my PhD in philosophy, and what happened was I just kept getting degrees because I really wanted to know the truth about a lot of things. So I would start over, and I'd get a degree, and I'd be like, well, you know what? Now I need to know about economics to answer all these questions. So I'd go start that degree, and then I'd be like, well, now there's um, psychological things that would bleed into how you would view economics. So I got to get a degree in psychology, and so it was this huge process. And I'm older. I started college a lot older, and so eventually, at some point in time, I realized that I was going to get done with all this crap, like a decade down the line, because I had I was doing dual degrees and stuff, and I realized the investment was so huge, and then at the end, I would probably struggle to find a job within academia, and I just was a little disenfranchised with the academic system, and I also thought the people that needed to get some of the best information, there's this huge attack on academia right now, and there is left-wing bias undoubtedly in academia. I will not deny that, but regardless, a lot of these really smart people were not, their voices weren't being heard. Right? We were getting kind of end of the bar philosophy, the kind that I do, and I was like, man,
Yeah.
I've always been, I came up really poor. I've always been just kind of a common dude, blue collar guy. And I was like, I want to kind of be the medium in between some of these really cool academics that have really cool stuff to say and have worked their whole lives on it. And the people that might be interested in hearing that. And yeah, so, and I was always interested in cowboy stuff, like grew up kind of doing it. And I thought, well, maybe I could just not have a targeted demographic, and I probably won't be that successful, but I'll talk about some cool stuff and I'll talk to some cool people. And maybe my mom will watch my show and she'll be like, good
Yeah.
job.
Well, little did you know, well, I'm sure you did know, but maybe little did you realize, like philosophizing, that's just as cowboy and as roping is. So, like that, that's an essential part to being a good cowboy. You got to philosophize on all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
like when you followed me on Instagram, I was like, oh, cowboys and philosophers. I wonder what this is all about. And then I was like, oh, YouTube. But oh, he's and my first thought is like he's got to do this in podcast form. And then I was like, then messaging, yeah, you're on the audio, and that's like Corbett Wall is a really good market analyst, and he does strictly YouTube, and I don't listen to him nearly like I would if he was on a podcast app, just because
Okay.
I don't have time to sit down and and watch a YouTube video. We were talking like if you lock your phone or you lock your screen, then unless you pay per month subscription, then you can't it shuts off, and then it's white people first world problems, but anyhow, I saw it and I was like, Cowboy and Philosophers. I think you're onto something. And I listened to a couple. I like it, and like I said, I don't know the ins and outs of like classical philosophy like I should, and so this is a great time to. So, I guess on that note, who is your favorite? Like gun to your head, who's your favorite philosopher?
Oh man, it's got to be Aristotle. I hate him. He's got like if Aristotle was here, he would be such a cocky son of a gun
Just
because
a
he's just
just
right about
a
everything.
prick.
Just a prick. You'd hate him. He'd be that kind of guy that he was always right, and you're just like, dude, shut up
Hmm.
about it, Aristotle. We get it.
Yeah.
You can know everything about everything. Yeah, he would be that guy.
Is
Yeah.
he the Donald Trump of philosophers?
I don't. Yeah, he would. Yeah, I don't know who he would be. He would. Yeah, you'd get tired of Aristotle real quick. One time, I like had some had adversity in my life, and I was texting or emailing one of my professors about it, and it was a really cool response because I was like, yeah, I'm sure Aristotle. We both prescribed Aristotle's virtue ethics, and so I'm like, yeah, I guess Aristotle would say I'm wrong, and he's like, you know what? Aristotle.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah. So he's a
I
Aristotle
that's your go-to, huh?
for sure. For sure. Politics, ethics. I mean, he was right about everything. I think, minus his metaphysics. I mean, he had this idea that so before Copernicus and stuff, a lot of Aristotle was used to justify, which fit pretty well in with religion at the time. That obviously the universe revolved around us, and that was about the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head that Aristotle was just dead wrong about. But I think other than that, he gives a compelling explanation for most things, from politics to ethics.
Yeah. Nice. Um, who's the most overrated?
Oh man, the most overrated. Um, I don't know. See, back in the day, if you were rich, you could just be a philosopher. You just had to write your stuff down in a book and like argue with another philosopher. And maybe Berkeley, the guy from UC Berkeley or Hume, they were both like hardcore
Okay.
skeptics, which is like they thought that you could, and you can really do this. This is the part where you have to be and not just a philosopher and be like, this shit's stupid. I could logically make the argument for you that you have no logical reason to believe that the sun is going to rise tomorrow. You literally, like, I could do that with logic because Hume does it.
Yeah.
And you just have to be like, shut up, Hume. You're just stupid. You didn't do anything here, wasting your time. So some of them are pretty overrated. Some of those Enlightenment guys.
Yeah, I could say the same thing about most libertarian philosophers
Okay.
today.
Okay. Okay.
Because I think they're right. I think they're 100% right on a lot of the stuff. Like even if you go into like the anarcho-capitalism stuff, I
Yeah.
think they're right. You could model a society with no governing body, based on if you have a society built on a respect for private property rights and the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
We don't have that, and I don't think we ever will.
Right.
So therefore, we've got to work with something else, and that's I'm a diehard libertarian, and then when it comes down, you ask me, should the government do this or that? My knee jerk answer is going to be no. The government shouldn't be doing anything. But that's not the world we live in, and that's why I say with the libertarian philosophers, whether it be Rothbard or Hoppe or Ludwig von Mises, any of those. Yeah, I'm not going to say they're wrong, but they're wrong because that's not the world that we live in, and
Absolutely.
and so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the same point you're making there.
Yeah, I do feel that there is some really beautiful political philosophy out there, libertarian philosophy, kind of social libertarian philosophy, and some of that stuff is really beautiful stuff. And I think that it can remain as that. Like it can be two different things. You can still.
Yeah.
I think that was some anarchist work, some of Bakunin and some stuff like that. I think, well, this is a really beautiful idea. It's a beautiful ideology, and I can respect it for being a beautiful ideology. I don't see it ever being pragmatic. Because it is a beautiful idea that was posited by some of these guys and women and stuff. So it's really, yeah. As long as
Yeah.
again,
Hey,
that's the philosopher
you
in
might
you that you
wiggle your
recognize.
cord or something. Your mic kind of cut out a little bit.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like, have you ever read Lysander Spooner?
No.
Okay,
No, sir.
so he's like one of the original American anarchists, and it's been a while since I read this essay or whatever it was, but he like his thought was that every member of Congress and the president, whoever swore an oath to the Constitution or to defend and uphold the Constitution, was bound by that. That was a legal contract. However, he was not bound by that because he didn't sign any document. He had no say in the writing of the Constitution, and he was one of the original, I guess, libertarian thinkers, and yeah, that's another one. Like when you go logically and step by step, like he's not wrong. In one sense, but in the real world sense, well, that's just not how it works. And
Right.
however logically right you may be, that's not how the world works right now. And that's a lot of the struggle I have with a lot of libertarian positions. Even though I agree with them wholeheartedly, that's not the world we live in. And how do we reconcile a lot of that? As I don't know. That's I think we're going to be doing a lot of soul searching here in the next at least 4 years. I think when you look at it was kind of the opposite of like the Obama phenomenon. The right half of the country hated Obama, but like most of your middle of the road people, they liked Obama and hated his policies. You look at at the 2010 House election, that you had the Tea Party wave, and then like they just steadily gained seats in the House and the Senate every term or every election during Obama's time in office, but Obama was always popular. with the American people. And Donald Trump was never popular overall, but but his base like got more and more devoted, and and he actually I it the Republican establishment, as much as they hated him, without him, I don't know if they would have ever won another presidential election. Like the Republicans, on a national level, were just, man, they were almost dead. And I don't
Yeah.
know, but for some reason, like I guess going back, like the Republicans picked up seats in the House, which means you know the I guess the at least probably the pocketbook of them of the country is tending towards conservative, and there looks like they're going to hold the Senate, but I don't know. Like I said, they're going to dump a ton of money into Georgia because of those two runoff races there, and and the Republicans need both of them, because if the Democrats pick up one, then it's a 50-50 split with Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker. So, uh, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of money poured into those races. Uh, so that does give me some hope that the country's not far left. But then you look at Biden's platforms when he's rolling out his transition team, and they're talking about like that critical race theory that Trump just banned in to be taught at the federal level. Guarantee you that'll be re-implemented pretty well on day one under Biden. So you're gonna have more intersectional, super woke left thinking that permeates everything from academia to the military right now, and you're gonna have a super left wing green policy that just starts to filter in through everything. And I don't know. I think I don't think tensions are going down anytime soon.
Oh, man, yeah, that's a difficult thing. So that's actually what I study now is, and probably the field of research I'll eventually go into is moral psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so like height and a lot of the stuff that they're putting out now is I hope to be the way moving forward. We were talking a little bit about that earlier, and I get a lot of young people that are really interested in learning functional fitness and
Yeah.
and how to get on and compromise with people. And that's kind of the field I've more or less kind of abandoned politics. I'm like a single issue voter, really, and but I hope that I don't know their tensions are going to go down either. It's a really tough thing to try to predict at this point, whether we'll continue to just live in these digital echo chambers or whether we'll eventually be able to talk to our neighbors and stuff. And I think moral psychology offers a compelling, data driven way to do that. But a lot of people literally don't want to hear it. I'll try to tell them, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, let me tell you how half the country feels. You can keep your facts that you think are facts. You can keep your moral reasoning that you think is infallible. And I'll tell you that half the country is probably one, we can't make generalizations about all of them. They're probably a
Mm-hmm.
multivariable group. And two, they're scared, fallible people like yourself. And
Yeah.
some people are receptive to that, especially young people. But a lot of people that have been radicalized by this stuff are like, no, I can't even
Yeah.
live in this country because half the people did this. And so I'm hoping that I can keep talking about this stuff, and I'm hoping that we can kind of see a way forward. Um, and moral psychology, like I said, offers a template for that, but we'll see. We'll see. It'll be tough.
Well, I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel, because when you look at like podcasting in particular, um, if you go down the like the top 25 on any level of podcast, like any category, they're probably going to be long form, and and they're going to have a bigger audience than just about any cable TV show or any TV show in general. And in particular the news. So that's a good thing. Like people are getting their news elsewhere. The problem with that, a lot of it comes from social media, and that's all, just headline driven and just clickbait shit. So
Right.
I know for my audience, and I think for the most part they're pretty good. But you gotta read past the headline. Like if there's a headline that catches your attention, read down and see what the because it's usually like 5 or 6 paragraphs down. You'll find out what they're actually trying to say, and it may be like the final line. You never know, and
Right.
but it's but I think when you look at people like Rogan and like Kyle Kalinske, Tim Pool, people want to know like what's actually going on, and they don't even particularly care your bias as long as you admit your bias.
Right.
And
Right.
that's kind of me. Like I don't like the news. Just like I don't believe you because I can see the hatred for Trump radiating out of your ears. So I don't believe what you're about to tell me. If you would have just said right off the bat, I think Donald Trump's the worst person on earth, and here's why, and then let me tell you the story, I can at least listen to you there because you're being honest, and I think that's a good sign that like people are trending away from cable news and more towards podcasts and maybe they're searching out there to continue their echo chamber, but there's a good chance somewhere along the way they're going to hear some differing opinions, and at least the seed is planted. So I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I think there does have to be some good things about that. And I really like your podcast for that reason is so I'm a linear thinker. So I'm really high in linear trades, which means I'll jump around really quick and I'm going to talk about a bunch of
Mm-hmm.
crap and tie it together and you'll be like, what are you talking about? But so I train personal protection dogs, Belgian Malinois, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, they're really cool dogs. And so one time somebody told me like, well, Belgian Malinois have the IQ of a 2-year-old. And I'm like, huh. Well, I would believe that they have the problem. They can solve a Rubik's cube at about the same level that a 2-year-old can. But what they are is incredibly perceptive, incredibly sharp. They understand the dynamics on a crazy level of everything that's happening in the room. That's not IQ. And I do think that people are like that. People sense when you're genuine. People sense when
Mm-hmm.
you have an agenda, and people sense when you're just saying, "Hey, these are the ideas that I have. I'm not willing to die on these hills. Do you find any of them compelling? I'm genuinely invested in having a conversation with you, not a bad faith conversation where I try to, subtly insult you. No, I'm just interested in telling you what I think, and I genuinely respect you as a human being. And when people are faking at that, they can feel it like a dog. And when people are really
Yeah.
doing that, people can feel it. They can sense what's going on. And so I really like that about your podcast is that you offer up your opinions, and it's a similar thread to mine that I try to. The underlying premise is that I'm not an unbiased, infallible human being. I'm like you, and this is what I think. But at the end of the day, if you don't like any of it, I still respect you because here's this crazy idea. I don't base my respect for people based on their political affiliations. I base it on things like their word and their integrity and mutual respect. So I think people can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so, and I can't be anything other than what I am. I'm not very good at faking stuff. Uh, and my wife will she's said it many times that like I'm honest to a fault because like I don't know, I just I guess I learned real early on that like if you lie about something you're gonna have to there's always like a lie to that just keeps on you have to tell another lie to cover up, and eventually you get caught. So like
Right.
rip the band-aid off, and it's usually better off that way. And um I don't know, I guess that maybe that's what bleeds through in the podcast, but I don't have this all figured out. I think I've got a pretty good foundation on what to think, but yeah, I don't have, like I said, I really misjudged the, like as far as this election goes. I even misjudged my own state. I thought for sure Nevada was gonna go to Trump by a slim margin, and it just is optimistic thinking, I guess. But I don't know. I think there's some, like you said, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I think the path to get there is going to be pretty rocky.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing that I would always tell people, and the studies that suggest this are uh, from a number of methodologies across a number of cultures across decades. And it's almost a known truth that you don't make, usually we don't, our political leanings are what we'd call post hoc justifications. The idea
Yeah.
that I always love it when I hear people say facts don't care about your feelings. And it's like, no, the facts you choose, that's a fact. How about that? That's a scientific fact. So I had figured out from watching your show, you're a libertarian, and I know a lot of libertarians, and I respect them because I usually get where they're coming from. So when you do the moral roots of conservatives like Haidt talks about and liberals, you find libertarians. And I saw this when I watched your show. You said something along the lines of like taxation is theft. And that's
Yeah.
because you're a really principled man. And so I'm making assumptions about you, but these are generalizations
Yeah.
about libertarians. And so for libertarians, what we really messed up in the 60s, and when we did moral reasoning, we thought only two things mattered to people. And you got this kind of liberal model of harm and fairness. And it turns out
Yeah.
there's at least six other things that are really important to people, justice being of them. And so uh, when you get a libertarian, you get someone that's really high in principle, like the principle of, you know, that I won't be taxed. And then you get the moral roots of somebody like a liberal or a left-leaning person, and they're really high in openness traits, and they want things like equality and fairness, which are equally important to them, and they don't mind violating someone's principles for it. So, and long story short, you see like that feelings essentially make political matters. So moral psychology kind of gives us a way to go forward and understand why people think the way they think.
I was about to pee my pants. Sorry about that.
Gotcha. No, same. Yeah. So I was just more or less rambling on it again.
Good enough. I like it. I'm a big fan of the ramble. So
Okay.
no, I
Okay.
think I think you're right. I do have a very strong set of principles, and I think most people should. I really think you should. You got to have roots, or you blow away like a tumbleweed. And but it's always like, what? That's the issue is like, uh, what are your roots? Everybody has different roots, and yeah, I don't know. There's a there's a and that's kind of the beauty of libertarianism is like everybody can kind of do their own thing as long as we agree. You don't hurt people and you don't take their stuff. Basically, is kind of the roots of it all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
because
get.
I'll go ahead.
I just was going to say, yeah, and I think that's really good to recognize. I think the way forward will be understanding that there's very little that you can do to change how someone was wired from childhood on, but to understand that the
Mm-hmm.
country was founded on democracy and compromise. And I'll give you a quick example. You had mentioned in your show you're pro Second Amendment, which is something I am as well. But so I'll give you two compelling stories real quick. I say to you, hey, brother, I'd like to talk to you about this issue, and it's really important to me. And let's go full agree that at the end we might not have a, we might not, we might just go ahead and start the dialogue out with the understanding that we're probably not going to agree, but I will tell you how I feel. And so I'll say, I was born in the city where it's statistically guns are used for violence way more often than they ever are in rural America. They were always terrifying to me. My friends were shot by them, and then school kids were shot by them, and I just feel they're a really scary thing. And you'll put yourself in a state of metacognition and say, "Oh, I understand how you feel like that." And then you'll say, "Well, I was raised in the
Mm-hmm.
country where they're very rarely used for any kind of type of violence. They were a part of my identity. We used them to dispatch wild animals or feral animals, and we had a lot of fun recreational times with them. And what am I supposed to do if someone breaks in my house? Make them a sandwich? I like to feel defended, and I do live in a rural area." And he'll go, "Okay, well, I understand why you feel that way," and then we'll agree that
Mm-hmm.
maybe there could be some compromise, and maybe it's not an issue that you could compromise on, but there might be other issues. But when you come right in and tell someone they're too epistemologically stupid to understand the nature of reality for not agreeing with you right off the bat, that they're just an idiot, it challenges them on such an evolutionary level that there's what you're going to do to ever break through to them or have any common ground. And so, and that's the way that moral psychology could help the dialogue going forward. And I hope that we'll move into something like that.
Well, yeah, and I think as a thought exercise for everybody, like when you hear some sort of opinion that is just radically different from yours, and in particular if it's coming from somebody that you know and respect, or at least don't hate, I guess, and ask questions instead of just saying, well, you're wrong. Just like, no, tell me why you think that.
Right.
Like, or even, if like I always do this to my buddies, like my buddy Aaron. It's just like, well, okay, defend your position,
Mm-hmm.
and 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 then like you'll find out real quick how strongly they are tied to that opinion. Because if they can't back it up, then that's when you lay out your own defense. I mean, it's but like if you just immediately, like, your hackles are up and like, oh, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That's where we've been for the last like 50 years in this country, and
Right.
it got us to where that's what got Donald Trump elected, and then it looks like unelected. So.
You're right. Yeah, absolutely. I thought they said that Trump was honestly elected because of negative partisanship. I mean, one, in part, people being left behind and, the forgotten people or whatever. And two, the irritation of the wokesters really fired people
Mm-hmm.
up. And so I think that Joe Biden might have been a on similar. He was certainly not never polled as the most compelling candidate, but it was a negative partisanship. It was like, uh, I don't know that you're the guy for me, but you're going to hurt the guy that I hate. And that was how Trump got
I
elected. I
I
think that was how he got unelected.
I think both candidates, regard and even if Trump somehow gets reelected through all this, doesn't look like it, but there's a chance. But even so, both of those candidates are a big fuck you to the ruling to the ruling class in general. Like we're tired of both of people were tired of the status quo. That's why Trump got elected. People were really tired of the Twitter tirades, and that looks like be a pretty big reason why. Like it's like we want somebody from the outside. Like, we want somebody from the outside that actually knows what the fuck's going on too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you did see a lot of that. You saw a lot of overlap in Trump supporters that were Bernie supporters because there
Mm-hmm.
was and when you talk to people on the far right, one thing that I noticed is they're equally disenfranchised with the GOP or with Republicans as
Mm-hmm.
they are with. You're going to be like, oh, so you're sympathetic to Republicans? It's like, no, they're not sympathetic to any of it. They're like, the whole thing is, they're ready for the whole thing to go.
Yeah, I one of my favorite memes that somebody shared to me. It's the Dwight when what's his Angela's like tapping on his shoulder. And he's like, fuck. And it's like it's like basically somebody like when I'm shitting on the Democrats, and then Republicans will come up thinking I'm on their side, and like, no, I don't like you guys either, or I don't like the GOP either,
Yeah,
and I think there's a lot of people like that out there that are just like uh, people are really over the two party system, but nobody seems to know how to get rid of it, and
absolutely.
uh,
Yeah.
and the Libertarian Party has not helped their case at all. I have nothing personally against Joe Jorgensen, but if you wanna, if you ever want to be, break into the two party stronghold, you're gonna have to put up somebody better than that.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, definitely. It's tough. I kind of think that maybe we could concentrate as well on, I'm kind of don't throw the baby out with the bathwater guy, which is a really unpopular opinion at this time. I'm kind of like a moderate centrist. I'm not really anything. I just try to base things on philosophy and the best that I can follow data analytics and empirical evidence. But um, I sometimes wonder about the amount of people that could fix the two-party system. And I'm not saying it would eventually wouldn't go back to where it's at now, but things like Citizens United and getting this kind of uh, revolving door of politicians and lobbyists. Like, could we?
Mm-hmm.
They say that millennials basically famously were traumatized by the 2008 recession and it just abandoned political systems, right? Like everyone just wants to get rid of the cops. There's
Yeah.
no like, hey, people don't realize that. So I was in law enforcement and private, all kinds of stuff, been in the security world my whole life. And people don't realize that there's massive, well-functioning bureaucracies already dedicated to constantly like improving policing, right? And they've been giving uh, ideas and studies and crazy meta-analyses of the problems and prescriptions for them for a long time before anybody put their eye on the police. And then millennials came along and were like, let's just get rid of them. And it's like, well, maybe we could just
Yeah.
improve them. Maybe we could just continue to improve upon them, which the grown-ups were doing. And so
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I do. I don't want to say a two-party system by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there could be significant resolve to improve it again if people that were inclined to do that would do so. And then there are some people that are, like you said, the notion that it's not working, let's do away with it, and I'm sympathetic to that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm no huge supporter of law enforcement. Like I don't I and a lot of that has to do not with the cops themselves, but it's just the laws in general. Like the whole George Floyd thing was over a fake $20 bill, which probably stemmed from that guy getting fired because his job went away because the government shut down or forced that business to shut down. Like it all stems from control, and the fact that the cops had to go show up to arrest a guy for a fake $20 bill, and the guy ended up dying. Like that. It just seems so wrong when you look at the whole circumstance behind it. Like I don't care what drugs the guy had in his system. He basically died over a fake $20 bill,
Right.
and the cops should not have been in that position in the first place. And law enforcement's a damn near impossible job as it is. And when you keep adding stupid laws and turning your police officers into tax collectors, essentially, that's where the distrust begins, and that's where it gets amplified the more you add these stupid laws on.
Yeah, I could see that. Absolutely, absolutely. And police have called for more funding over the years. And I think that, not to launch into this whole police thing, but my understanding from having worked with them and served on executive protection details with them and studied it in school was that well, there is a militarization of the police, but that comes from things like that happened in Florida and California, where people just came out and killed cops and with 4 AK-47s until there was no more left
Mm-hmm.
to show up. right? So you do need a branch that is militarized that's just for that, right? Like a SWAT team
Mm-hmm.
type branch. But then you go to regular officers, and this is a field that I worked in privately for a long time. Was I would come in and deal with ways to teach people emotional fitness, right? To teach people that this was something that you have to have as equally as important as physical fitness is emotional fitness. You have to be able to have people just call you, whatever to your face, and literally it just not register. Um,
Yeah.
and so you're going to ask a guy to do that for 25K a year and work 60 hours a week, and then on his off time
Mm.
run and lift weights and train jujitsu so that in an altercation he doesn't feel the need to go for his gun or his taser that doesn't work a majority of the time, we know. And then you want less money for that guy. That's going to make that better. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, no, what we need is to pay these
Yeah.
guys, a year, and have.
Yeah.
Not only that, the guys are overworked, they're under recruited. We have this
Mm.
polygraph test that's not working out for the best people being hired. I don't know what to do about it, but it needs reform, and there's variations of ways in which you could do reform that people have suggested, which money would help us look into and gather data on. So, long story short, it's like I know that the defunding was just kind of a brief flash in the pan. It was a talking point, but it still was like a bigger symptomatic thing of like let's not let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's just fix something that's already working, because at the end of the day, you're not going to send a social worker to deal with Joe Blow, former linebacker, Joe Public that beats his wife, right? The social worker is going to be the
Yeah.
worst possible person to deal with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. There's always, and when that first thing came out, like defund the police, I was like, I heard defund. Like it wouldn't have mattered what you said after that. That's you said defund, and that's gonna prick my ears up.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you're gonna defund the police. All right, what's that mean? And that's always my first thing. And then it comes with every law too. My first thought, this comes from my dad because he was in legislature for 8 years.
Oh well.
How are you gonna enforce it? Who's tasked with enforcing that? And but it's defund. I was like, what? So what's that mean? We're gonna do away with police in a city rife with crime. Are you going to do away with some of those laws that are driving the crime? So like the drug laws, are you going to do away with the drug war? Because then you can make a little better case about defunding the police, because you know that could lead to the de-escalation of gang violence, cartel violence. It could, but that's not what they're talking about. They're just talking about doing away with the cops and replacing them with social workers. Well, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right.
And this is coming from a leaning towards anarchy libertarian. Like that
Right.
that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life.
Right, right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did a podcast on this about how we just have to be, and I don't know how successful it was, but how we have to be really clear going forward in like the ecosystem of ideas. We're on like a precipice of a lot of things going wrong. And so being really like, if you would have said, how about let's divert money from crazy SWAT teams, them needing a Bradley fighting vehicle or a MRAP
Yeah.
to better recruitment, right? Or something
Or
like that.
better training.
Yeah, let's restructure the budget. I think a lot of people would have been receptive, but it was a knee-jerk reaction, and I get it. There probably was never any real chance of the police being defunded. It was just kind of a far
No.
left talking point, kind of a boogeyman people got real freaked out about. But at the end of the day, it was symptomatic that people, at least a significant portion of young people, were just in this like. I put a quote on Instagram that says, "Don't tear down a fence so you know why it was there." And I put like good advice for
Yeah.
cowboys, good advice for life, and that really is like don't tear down a fence until you're sure what it's keeping in.
Yeah. I think that's about as solid advice as you can get. And there's also the part like and I have to kind of brag on like the rural conservative way of life. But I'm sure it was drilled into your head at a young age too. Is like you always leave something better than you found it.
Absolutely.
And whether you're camping or like you're having a get together at the park or something, like a family get together. Like our family was always like get to camp, pick up trash. We're not leaving trash here, and and I think we need to do that as a society as a whole. Like trash thinking, trash insults, like get that shit out of here. Let's like if we're gonna talk, there's one thing talking shit or hurling insults. Like
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of talking shit.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of talking shit,
Yeah.
but it's got to be in a joking way or it's got to be constructive.
Absolutely. Right.
But just to hurl insults, I mean that I'm not about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
If,
Absolutely.
if if we're doing it to make each other laugh or to get something constructive across, then I'm all for it. But just to do it, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not in that game.
That's awesome. I think we definitely need that going forward. I do notice that I mean, like I watched the McSally and Kelly debates here, and she kept calling him, and I'm not a great fan of either of them, but she kept calling him counterfeit Kelly. And I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, man, if my dad or any of these old men were here, left, right, in between, they'd have said, hey, just knock that crap off. They were
Yeah,
like that. Can't stand rude behavior in a man. That was them. They would have said, hey, knock that shit off. We're just
yeah.
keep
That was one of Trump's biggest problems. Didn't know when to shut the hell up.
True. True.
Yep. Um, but I feel want to hold on a little bit, but I think we probably covered enough for one podcast, and we'll have to do it again. But before we leave, tell everybody where they can find you, find your show.
Yeah, yeah, it's on YouTube, and we've got it on Spotify, almost all the major platforms. I'm on everything except that I know of, except iTunes, and then YouTube at Cowboys and Philosophers, and we got same Cowboys and Philosophers if you want to check it out, and hopefully I give something that people might agree with, might not agree with, but might find interesting to hear. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thanks